Okay, so earlier in class today, we talked about the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, and how that started World War One. So today, this short video is going to talk about how it became a world war. So it's obviously a conflict between Serbia and Austria-Hungary. But that kind of sparks into a world war. And as you can see in this picture, this is Archduke Franz Ferdinand with his fancy plume and hat with his wife Sophie walking down to the kind of open air vehicle that they would then ride to their assassination on accident. All right, so the assassination crisis. So the date is June 28th, 1914. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austrian throne, was assassinated by a Slavic nationalist, which we'll get more into later. So Slavic nationalist, again, that's the name of the assassin was Gavrilo Princip. He was from Bosnia, which was a part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but he identified as a Serb, and he wanted to help Serbia kind of take apart the Austrian Empire. Now, Franz Ferdinand, the victim, was very unpopular in his own country. So his own people in Austria, in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, did not like him, especially the Austrians and the Hungarians. So kind of the people in power did not like him, partially because the woman he married was not really royal, so they didn't see her as kind of worthy of being the wife of the heir to the throne. And others disapproved of his ideas for running the country. So in that video we watched today, it kind of talked about the road to war. It talked about how he had this vision for the Slavic states or the Slavic countries within his empire to have more power, to kind of balance out the power between Austria and Hungary. And a lot of people, like the Austrians and the Hungarians, did not like that because it meant they would lose some of their power. And again, many people, is what I just said, so many people believed that Franz Ferdinand favored splitting the power in the empire 3 ways, so between the Austrians, the Hungarians, which on the map, the Austrians are the orange, the Hungarians are the purple, and he wanted to split it between the Slavs, so the kind of smaller ethnic groups towards the south, like where you see Bosnia, Croatia, Herzegovina, those were more of the Slavic ethnic groups, so he wanted to give them power as well. So that way they would have more of a say and be treated better. Unfortunately, the Hungarians didn't want to share power, and this upset Serbia, which was its own country, and you can see it just to the south of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Serbia wanted the Slavs in the Austro-Hungarian Empire to separate from Austria-Hungary. So they want the Slavs in the empire to be unhappy so that they'll revolt and join Serbia. So the problem for Serbia then is if Franz Ferdinand is successful and he gives the Slavs more power in the empire, then they're not going to want to break away and join Serbia. So that kind of goes against what Serbia is working towards as well. Now, the assassin, Gavrilo Princip, belonged to the, I guess depending on how you look at it, the terrorist group Black Hand. And their goal is to help Bosnia, which was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, become part of Serbia. So again, they were from Bosnia, which was a part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and they were supported by the Serbian military. So they want to become part of Serbia, hence why they're trying to attack the Archduke, or kill him. All right. Now, Archduke and his wife are assassinated on June 28th. And this sparks a month of kind of diplomacy and negotiations and the big powers of Europe trying to figure out what to do next. So Austria, of course, does not like that their heir to the throne and his wife have been assassinated. They're allied with Germany. So on July 5th, so a couple of days after the assassination, Germany promises Austria that they would back them up whatever happens. So no matter what happens after in the aftermath of the assassination, Germany will support Austria. So this is called a blank check. So again, in that video, it talks about how Austria is kind of not as advanced as the rest of Europe. They need a little bit more support. Germany says, we'll support you in whatever decision you make. If you go to war, we'll support you. If you don't go to war, we'll support you. So again, something like this is called a blank check, where one country supports the other and says, we'll support you no matter what. So almost a month later, Austria issues an ultimatum to Serbia. An ultimatum is sort of do this or else. If you don't do this, then we'll go to war. So they give Serbia an ultimatum. Now remember, the assassin came from Bosnia. So the assassins were from Bosnia, which was a part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. But their goal was a bigger Serbian nation. So that's why Austria gives this ultimatum to the country of Serbia, which is not a part of the Austrian Empire. So again, the assassins came from not Serbia, but Bosnia, which is a part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. But Austria is giving Serbia the ultimatum, and they give them 48 hours to agree to everything. Otherwise, Austria is going to attack. So the next slide is going to talk about the terms, but again, Austria delivers this ultimatum to Serbia and gives them 48 hours to agree to everything, otherwise they will attack. So the terms. First, Serbia must issue an apology for the killings. So they must publicly apologize to Europe for the killings. They must close down all anti-Austrian newspapers and clubs. So again, this is a free, independent country separate from the Austrian Empire, and Austria is telling them to get rid of all anti-Austrian newspapers and clubs. So get rid of anyone who does not support Austria. They also need to fire all anti-Austrian school teachers and army officers. So anyone who doesn't support Austria that is a part of the education system must go, and any army officers that don't support Austria. Now the problem is that Serbia had a pretty, their military was pretty important to them, and a lot of their officers did not like Austria, and that's kind of where that support for those assassins in Bosnia came from, is from the military officers. So telling Serbia to get rid of their military officers that don't support Austria is going to be a huge problem for Serbia. The final term, and this is the one that the Serbians hated the most, is that they were supposed to let Austrian officials go into Serbia to investigate so they could find out who was involved. Now, the problem is Serbia doesn't want to have any connection to the assassination because they're worried that, they're going to get taken over and go to war. So they the military tried to distance themselves from the assassination. And that's kind of why they supported Bosnians and not actual Serbians in the assassination attempt. But if you allow Austrian officials to go into Serbia and investigate, who knows what they could find. It might be that they find that Serbia is to blame, and then Austria has a real reason to go to war with Serbia. So they didn't want Austrian officials coming into Serbia. And that's the term that they could not agree to. So again, Serbia agreed to everything except the last term, which again, Austria gave them 48 hours to agree to everything. They're not agreeing to everything. That's going to be a problem. Now, the British don't want war to happen. They suggest a conference to find a peaceful solution. So they say, let's all meet, let's talk about this crisis, let's get together. Unfortunately, both Russia and Germany refused. And the reason why is Russia, so this kind of goes back to the diplomacy and the alliances. Russia was allies with Serbia, and Germany was allies with Austria. So they don't want necessarily a peaceful solution. They want to help their allies figure this out. So, and to them, it's not necessarily a peaceful solution. So they're not willing to meet to talk about this. And on July 28th, a month after the assassination, Austria declares war on Serbia. So again, Austria declares war on Serbia. So what we're going to look at is how does this become a world war? And here's the newspaper, and unfortunately that highlighter didn't transfer from PowerPoint. So what that says, it's the official newspaper headline that says Austria declares war on Serbia after assassination of the heir to the throne. So I apologize that turned out funky. Now, how does it turn into a world war? So this goes back to the system of alliances. When Austria declares war on Serbia, Serbia's ally Russia has to mobilize. So remember, Russia is massive. It's going to take them a long time to mobilize. They can kind of see that they're going to have to defend their ally Serbia, and they need to mobilize. So when Austria declares war on Serbia, Russia mobilizes. This puts pressure on Germany because they feel like they have to back up Austria. So when Russia is mobilizing to help Serbia, it's going to be very threatening to Austria. Germany has to back up Austria, their ally. So Germany starts mobilizing as well. The big deal is each country is more worried about being isolated than about being dragged into a war. So they don't want to be left behind. They don't want to get caught unawares. They're not thinking about what is the potential for a world war. That's not on their minds. So here's why it turns into a world war. When Germany feels it has to get involved, they enact the Schlieffen Plan. So the Schlieffen Plan is Germany's strategy. Now the problem is that German officers, a couple decades before World War I, come up with this plan in the event that Germany goes to war. Again, a couple of decades before World War I. Now, as you can see, Germany's in the center of Europe, so to their left is France and to their right is Russia. So two big people who are not allies with Germany. Remember, France hates Germany because Germany took Alsace-Lorraine for them. So part of the Schlieffen Plan is that Germany needs to attack France immediately. And the way they do that is they go through Belgium, which is technically a neutral country. So they have to attack France, and to get to France, they march through Belgium. Now, obviously that brings France into the war because they are being invaded by Germany. And the reason it brings Britain into the war is that Britain swore to protect Belgium. And part of that is because Belgium has a lot of ports. So when the UK wants to trade with Europe, they use Belgium's ports. So when Belgium is taken over by Germany, the UK has to get involved to defend Belgium. So France and the UK get pulled into the war because of their alliances with Belgium and each other. And again, France is being attacked by Germany. So Germany attacking France brings in two other large European powers. The reason why they invade France is they need to defeat France quickly. They don't want to fight a two-front war. And I'm going to show a map in the next slide. If Germany fights a two-front war, if they're fighting off both France and Russia, they're screwed. Basically, they're surrounded. That's not going to go well for them. So their Schlieffen Plan is that they need to defeat France quickly in like 6 weeks before Russia's even ready to fight. So remember when Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, Russia started mobilizing their troops. So they started gathering their armies on the border. So that's what kind of triggered Germany to enact this plan. As they saw Russia mobilizing, they thought that Russia would take forever to mobilize because they're so large and unorganized. So again, they're going to defeat France quickly in 6 weeks before Russia's ready to fight, and then turn and fight Russia. Now I'm on bullet point B. Because the French and German border was heavily fortified, Germany goes through Belgium, where there are not as many forts. So again, I'm going to show you a map on the next slide. You can kind of see why Belgium was easy access. So Germany goes through Belgium, again, which was like kind of a neutral country. They weren't really going to get involved. Once Germany invades Belgium, that triggers the United Kingdom to step in. Now, Belgium did resist, which the Germans did not expect. And again, bullet point E, Britain had signed a treaty to defend Belgium if it was attacked. So going through Belgium brings the British into the war as well. So here's a map. So as you can see, Germany's the pink country. To the left is France. To the right is Russia. Again, they don't want to fight a two-front war. So invading France and defeating France quickly in 6 weeks will give them enough time to then turn around and send all of their troops to the Russian front. That's what they're banking on. Now, again, they go through Belgium to get to France, which draws in the United Kingdom as well. What screws up the Schlieffen Plan is the officers who planned it 30 years before World War I broke out. So if you can imagine the new technology that takes place, and we'll talk about that next week, it stalls the war. So they can't defeat France in 6 weeks because of things like the machine gun and the development of trench warfare. So spoiler alert, they end up taking a lot longer than 6 weeks to defeat France, which means Russia has time to mobilize and Germany ends up fighting a two-front war, which we'll get into later.